Laura Smith.
Well, thank you so much, David. And that was, to be honest, you've told everybody everything now. I've not got much else to say. Yeah, so I'm really, really pleased to be able to join you all. And just before kind of we get started, David was saying, and I absolutely agree, that one of the great things that's come out of this horrible situation really is the fact that we can all connect and do this kind of meeting. And I can't wait to have, well, I can wait definitely to have some physical meetings that you know, that like CLP meetings for example, but I'm hoping that we can kind of get a nice balance of doing things like this and also having those physical meetups as well when we get some sort of normality back. So yeah, this evening I've seen there's quite a few names on here that I do know, so, and I know there's people on here who have who've campaigned so hard for me in the past, and I am eternally grateful. For those of you who don't know me, I am Laura, and I was born in Crewe. My grandfather was a miner, just from a little pit village outside Glasgow. So half my family is from up in Shotts, and the other half is from down here. And I guess my politics, and I've said it before, I was really lucky because politics was just something that we always spoke about in my family. It was politics in the morning, lunchtime, in the evening, and it's just the way that I was brought up. It was totally normal, and the struggle of workers was just part of the conversation. Obviously, with my granddad being a miner, my gran was probably the most ferocious woman that I could ever have dreamt of, an absolute angel, just 5 foot of fierce Scottish mining wife basically. And yeah, it was just when I was born in Crewe, and then my dad, he used to help, he used to drive around the previous MP for Crewe and Nantwich, Gwyneth Dunwoody, and I used to sit in the back of his car basically, and he would pick Gwyneth up from the station and take her to where she needed to go, and I'd listen to these stories, and she was always so lovely to me, and gave me a lot of time, and she was very theatrical, and it just seemed like a different world, a completely different world. And never in my wildest dreams could I have imagined that I would have become a member of parliament. And actually I still can't believe that I became a member of parliament. I don't think anybody in my family can believe that I became a member of parliament either. So how did that happen? Well, like David said, I was a primary school teacher. I went into teaching, I've never made any odds about it. My family struggled financially, and going to university wasn't something that was just handed to us. I went to university, I was put myself through uni. I was working 3-4 jobs to go, but I was in the situation where I wasn't going to go unless I came out of it with a career, and that's what I did. I decided I wanted to be a teacher, went to Manchester Met, worked very hard to get that, had all the difficulties that go with going to university in, well, it was in the 2000s. It's even worse now, but even then, paying your rent, tuition fees, the sheer cost of living. I remember I was laughing the other day with a housemate who I live with. She was remembering this one time that we didn't have any food at all, and we were both working, trying to put ourselves through, and I had a driving instructor at the time, and she came and delivered a food parcel for us both to cheer us up. And we were just saying, God, that's quite normal now, isn't it? It's ridiculously normal, and people don't even bat an eyelid about it, it would seem. But I got through it, it was at Manchester Metropolitan, came out of it, went and did teaching, absolutely loved it, did it for a number of years. I was always organising. I don't know, I always got on well with the head teachers, but I don't think too many of them were that sorry to see the back of me when I moved on to different schools. And I guess this in sense of rage that I had about so many things that I'd kind of experienced in my life just got worse and worse when I saw what was happening to children right in the middle of 10 years of austerity, basically. And I could see it every single day with the kids who were coming into my classroom. I could see in the way the curriculum was changing. I was being pulled out of class more and more and more to go and kind of do bits of middle management stuff, and my teaching assistant was then teaching my class but getting paid half as much as me, just injustice after injustice. And I guess it kind of came to a head when there was a child who I was teaching at a school in Winsford at the time, and I knew this child was experiencing difficulties, and it was just as they were going out to play and they'd all had their fruit, and she actually went into the bin and picked up the disregarded apple core of one of the children who had dropped it in, and she was starving, she was hungry, and I knew what was going on in her family's situation, and it was chaotic and it was very difficult, but they weren't bad people, and they're not bad people. And it made me so cross, because if the necessary interventions had been put into this family to help and support them, then this child wouldn't have been experiencing that. And I guess that's kind of when all of this stuff, all of this politics and everything else that was going on inside of me, and I had quite a lot of personal experience from the way that I'd grown up as well, came to a head. And I at the time it wasn't it wasn't just straight away, but I slowly became more and more active in politics, and certainly in school campaigning. And it's true, I ran a small business. It's quite funny because Guido Fawkes, or whatever he's called, ran this piece on me as if I was some big entrepreneur running this huge business. The truth of it actually is that the school that I was working at, I'd become a single parent, and the school that I was working at told me I had to come back full time or I couldn't keep the job, basically. My son was 15, 16 months at the time. There's just no way that I could have done it. I couldn't have afforded the childcare. It just wasn't something that I was able to do. And so sadly, I had to leave that job. And the only reason that I started my own business was because I couldn't get a job that would be able to give me the hours and the pay in order for me to carry on teaching in the classroom and look after my son, or ever see my son. So yeah, this idea that some portray of me running this huge business empire couldn't really be further from the truth, but it does make me laugh a little bit. Fake news, they call it. But yeah, that kind of, the good thing that did was it gave me the freedom actually to be able to express how I was feeling in ways that I couldn't from within the classroom, because you were obviously silenced quite a lot in that kind of role when you're working within a school. And yeah, back in 2017, I'd been going to some local meetings, and I'd heard about, you know, obviously we all did, what was going on with the national funding formula and these huge cuts that were happening. And it was gaining momentum in Nantwich, actually, which was surprising for anybody who knows Nantwich well. And I was just so angry again, because I've got 2 young children. All of my friends similar age to me, they're people who are mainly renting. Some have managed to get a property. Most have been working, you know, fairly precarious jobs, getting by, struggling, and then to hear that their kids, they're trying to do the best by their kids, but yet these huge cuts to their education were just coming down the line. And so I had enough of waving my finger at the TV, etc., etc. And I actually organised this this protest in Nantwich Town Square. And I've said it before, I turned up in that square, and again, if anybody knows Nantwich, it's not really that used to protests. And there was me, and there was my dad, who was like 74, I had my dog at the time. My daughter was in a pushchair. I had a megaphone and a milk crate. And I'd kind of spread the word about this protest I was having, and I'd begged friends of mine, please come, said to like the mums at school, etc. And I'd been on social media trying to get some, trying to get people interested. And I stood there and the police came up to me, and I'd kind of, I'd told them that I was having this thing, and they were joking, and they were like, oh, Laura, what do you reckon, like 20 minutes, half an hour? Anyway, it was amazing because that square was filled in the end with 400 people, 400 angry parents, teachers, head teachers. It just got wind, and it was just beautiful to watch. And the Northwest TV came, and various other news things, and it was great because people always tell you that they're not interested in politics or they don't get politics, but actually it's not true. It's, if you take the information to people, they do care about stuff like education and what's happening in their towns, etc., etc. And from that protest, I organised a public meeting with the trade unions at Crewe Alex, and again a public meeting that had 300 people came to that, and then from that public meeting we had a mass demonstration in Sandbach. We had nearly 2,000 people marched in Sandbach, and I've said this quite a few times, the last time there was a march like that was the Peasants' Revolt. So it was just brilliant to see in somewhere like Sandbach. And we were on what's it called, BBC programme, I can't remember what it's called, came along and filmed it, and it was great. But the most important thing that changed my life really was that Theresa May called this snap general election, and I had been in the Labour Party for a long time, never thought that I would be able to be the candidate, but luckily the good people of Crewe and Nantwich CLP asked if, you know, we had the conversation, and it was me who was lucky enough to be picked. But did any of us think that I could win it? Probably not. It was taking on Edward Simpson, who, yes, his popularity had gone down, mainly because of the school issue, but it was still, we were not a target. Nobody was thinking. Obviously, Theresa May had called this snap general election at a time when the Parliamentary Labour Party was, well, it always seems to be imploding, but we'd had the coup and all the rest of it, and they thought basically that this was a good time to take Jeremy Corbyn out, I'm sure. And it didn't end up being like that at all, because this manifesto, when it was leaked, I remember during that campaign, it was just magic. As soon as that manifesto started getting out, you could have real conversations with people on the doors, and they wanted change and they were interested, and it was a great buzz. Still didn't think I was going to win, but it was good to see the Labour Party in Crewe and Nantwich really enjoying the campaign and the energy around it. And then on election night, again, didn't really think I was going to win, and I think we were 3 or 4 recounts, found out at 6:30 in the morning that I was the new Member of Parliament for Crewe and Nantwich. And the best thing about that for me, it was a win for everybody, because I am what people say never gets to Parliament. I'm a working class person with no ambition to ever really go into a place like that. I'd only ever been to London a handful of times. The first time that I walked into Parliament was as the MP. I'd never been before, and I was incredibly lucky and privileged and honoured that the people of Crewe and Nantwich put their faith in me at that time. And it's interesting because I saw that David shared my maiden speech on the link. I can't tell you how nervous I was when I did that speech, and watching myself, I was so nervous. My knees were literally knocking together. And I got home and I said to my mum and dad, I was cross with myself because I've messed up my words, and I said I was so nervous because I'd never had a problem. I'd always been able to go out and speak my mind. And my dad just said to me, well, Laura, you haven't got time to be nervous because you are there to represent the people who put you there. You are there to represent working class people, and you deserve to be there as much as anybody else. And that was it. From that moment on, I had a word with myself and I went down and I never let myself be nervous again. And I did all of the things in Parliament that I wanted to. I said the things that I wanted to. I always stood up for trade union rights, which is something I've always been in the trade union. I continue to be in the trade union, and I stuck to my promises. And one of the things that I stuck to my promises on was the fact that I thought that we should respect the result of the referendum. And sadly, you know, what happened come 2.5 years later, and my time in Parliament was very much dictated by what was going on with Brexit, was that in 2019, it didn't matter what else I wanted to talk about. It didn't matter that I had tried to respect the result of the referendum in the way that I voted. I come under huge amounts of pressure from some areas, but it didn't matter because the brand to Labour was that they wanted a second referendum, and the fact is that Crewe and Nantwich wanted to respect the result of the referendum, and there were other factors on the door. Of course, there was Jeremy had a 2.5-year campaign against him from outside the party, from inside the party, and that has an impact. There's no point denying it. It does. But Brexit was the thing that finished me off here, and it did massively. You know, 8,000 votes. It was pretty much 8,000 votes who came over back in 2017 from, you know, the UKIP side of it. We had the UKIP vote came back to Labour actually in Crewe at that point. That chunk just moved straight away from me, and it was honestly heartbreaking. It wasn't heartbreaking even about losing my job. It was heartbreaking to see that so much hope had just evaporated, and me, like everybody else, I'm sure, has found it very, very difficult for a number of reasons. And at the start of the year, when I'd obviously lost the job, it was Christmas time. I was just eating a lot and it was to get through it. And my son, it was, basically said to me, right, you've got to, what are you doing? Come on, you're a grown up, you've got to crack on, Mum. And I did. You do. And I did stand for election for council because I want to represent people. I want people to have socialist politics. You know, I don't want it to disappear. And so I stood for council. I was really pleased to be elected. I'm working within the trade union movement as a political officer, and I'm really pleased to be doing that. And it's we keep going, and we have to keep going, and it's hard sometimes. And one of the things that kind of I've put a lot of energy into this year has been the No Holding Back project with John Trickett and Ian Lavery, and we've been on this massive listening tour all over the country, doing these Zoom meetings, talking to CLPs, branches, people outside the Labour Party, trade union branches, listening to them about what they think needs to happen within Labour and what they think has gone wrong, and what direction we need to take. And our report, we started that at the start of lockdown, and our report comes out this week, fingers crossed. So it should be quite hopefully everybody will enjoy having a look through it and see that the person who I wanted to be leader isn't leader of the party. But my God, I really, really want to get the Tories out, and I do want a Labour government. And there's some people who might not agree with that, or and I get it. There's so much to be angry about at the moment, but I just have to put my energy into getting the Tories out. And some people think that with everything that's happening in the Labour Party, and especially what we've seen happen to Jeremy in the last couple of weeks, that that's not the right way to look at it, but for me, that's where I am. It's organising to get the Tories out, because I am sick of them, and I do not want my children having a Tory government for the next however long. And we've had, obviously this week, we've had, everybody's probably been glued to the TV like I have, with what's going on in America. And yes, I'm so pleased that we've got rid of Trump, but the idea that we've got rid of Trump and what he stands for is just not true. It's not true. It's there, and it's that here in our lives, in our day-to-day lives as well. And we have to offer an alternative for people who have been held back and forgotten about by politics. And if we don't figure that out, and if people don't start listening to it, then we will be stuck with the same kind of stale politics that has cut so many people out for so long. And I wrote an article this week, and it's kind of it was in the Morning Star, and some people completely disagree with it, and they don't recognize my analysis, but I think some just don't recognize their own privilege, quite frankly, and they don't want to listen to the people who maybe you know, it's easier to just say they're stupid, or they're this, or they're that, or whatever, and just take them for granted like they're going to come back. But it is not that simple, and it is a mistake if people fall into that trap. And I'm really pleased to see Biden in the White House. I will be even more pleased if he listens and respects the progressives who put him there. And I hope that Keir Starmer takes a similar approach. I'm not going to talk for too much longer. Well, I'm not going to talk anymore. I'm quite happy to take any questions from people, David, or if anybody wants to talk, ask me something to go in a bit more detail about, then please feel free. I didn't want to just write a speech, I just wanted a chat basically, so feel free.
That is cool, that is cool. Thank you very much indeed. That's absolutely wonderful. What we normally do, and believe it or not, I've got to tell you something, Laura. We got 36 people on tonight, which is the most we've ever had.
Oh,
so
that's good.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Well, hopefully it'll be 36 happy people.
Well, I hope so as well. I hope so. That's absolutely brilliant. I'm so pleased. I'm so pleased. I knew if you ever answered my emails, I knew I'd get enough people on.
I'm so bad at emails, David. Don't take it personally. Please don't take it personally.
There's no problem. What we normally do for this, because we normally have about 20 odd people, I ask people to actually write their questions down on the chat, because I find it a lot easier that if I ask you the questions, we stop people actually talking across each other. But if you want to ask a question yourselves, please either put your hand up, although I can't see you all, or put something on, put your hand up on the actual thing where you put your hand up on. You know what I mean. I'm sure you do. If anybody would like to start off, or I'm going to have to ask a question. Oh dear, come on, someone please start off. Oh, we got Lisa. Come on, Lisa. And then we got David. Then we got Rachel. So hi, Lisa first.
Yeah, hi Laura.
Oh, you're such a star. Lisa's campaigned for me so many times.
I know. I'm just thinking it's such a lifetime, isn't it? Since those days going around the streets, and we were heartbroken too. So I just wondered if you think you might stand again, because I'd come and campaign for you again.
I get asked this all the time, and the honest answer is, so much for me depends on where my children are at that point. And I say it only because I was lucky last time, in the sense that nobody thought I was going to win. My parents, bless them, they'd just sold their little house that they had, and they kind of had plans of just a few things they might like to do. And then I went and won this election, and I was like, I need help looking after my children. And I was really lucky because mum and dad moved in with me, and they've helped me massively and supported me. It depends, because it's Parliament and the way that it's set out isn't that easy for people like me with young children, single parents. But at the same time, I have this burning thing in me that just I want to be able to do what I can to help the project. And as well, it very much depends on Crewe and Nantwich. They might not want me. I believe in that being up to the membership. So we'll wait and see. Never say never.
Good.
I will always be involved, Lisa, that's for sure.
Yeah, I bet you will.
David, you've got a question. Mr. Kopak.
Hi, David.
Yes. Yeah. Hi, Laura. That's really good. Very interesting. Thanks. Laura, I just want to ask you something about actually being in Parliament.
Mm-hmm.
And it has been said on numerous occasions that when MPs get into Parliament, something happens to them and they change.
Yeah.
And they start supporting things that one assumes that they wouldn't have done under different circumstances. What's your view on that, and have you experienced that?
Honestly, when I went into Parliament, I was basically told pick a side, and I said I'm not. I work for Crewe and Nantwich, so no, I'm not getting involved in that. I've never not been honest about my politics and who I voted for in supporting Jeremy. Yes, people do change. They absolutely change, and you see it happen. And all I can think is, and there is a Westminster bubble, and the thing with the Westminster bubble is a lot of them don't realise they're in it or part of it. They think they're talking about somebody else, but it's not. They are the Westminster bubble. And I get it, because it's such a weird work environment. You're there so much. You're there all hours of the day. It's kind of, sometimes you're just like voting one after the other. It's like a very strange boarding school in a lot of ways that I never wanted to attend. But I'm not saying that I didn't, it was absolutely fascinating. But you have to just stay very clear on what's driving you. And I think the truth is, a lot of people go in and they haven't got that much politics. So they're quite easily swayed one way or the other. That's the truth of it. Not bad people at all, but just no politics. So my question is, why politics? And obviously there's reasons for that we could go into, but we need more political people in there who are driven by a desire to change things, and they're driven by it because they know what the experience is, or they've seen the experience, and that motivates them. And I think when you've experienced it and you've seen it day to day, or people who have, then you haven't got time to get sucked into the Westminster bubble, however tempting that might be, because you're there to do a job. And I always took that very, very seriously, but I can see why it happens. I really can.
We've got lots of questions here for you, Laura. Please bear with me, everyone. I'll try to get through to everyone. I think the next person is Rachel, and then I'm going to go to a couple of people who have asked questions on the chat. Rachel.
Hi, Laura.
Hi, Rachel.
Hi. I went to Manor Road School a very long time ago.
Oh, well, I used to live on St Mary's Road. That's where, just down the road from there. That's where I grew up. Oh, okay.
Yeah. My question really, it always seems to me that Parliament is completely hidebound and archaic and anachronistic. I can't imagine how we can ever get any sense out of the place, because of the way it's set up. It looks so, it's almost like I don't know, a serial on the telly or something like that. But how on earth do you actually manage to function in an archaic, blokey environment like that?
Yeah, it's so strange. So for the first kind of few weeks, you're in this induction thing, which isn't actually, the induction doesn't really tell you anything about how to run a constituency office or any of the important stuff. It's all about how you understand what anybody's talking about in there and what all these different weird things are that are going on. again, most of it's just absolute rubbish, to be honest. And I just, I kind of skirted around it. I did the bits that I had to, but I'm sorry, I'm just was not good. I mean, I just was not going to participate in some of it. It's so self-indulgent. It's all done in the, you know, for tradition and all the rest of it. And yes, there are people who will cling on to it with for dear life because it suits them to keep it cut off from the reality of many people. It stops it being a place that is accessible for a lot of people. How do you change it? I'm a bit annoyed that there's not more of a push right now from some MPs to be changing that system long term, because they're proving that it can be changed by the fact of doing the calls where you can zoom in, where you know, they obviously are doing a lot of the stuff remotely. And I think there should be more of a push for it. For example, so when I was an MP, and like everybody else, if you're not living down in London, then you get an amount of money for accommodation. Now, I was very grateful for that, because there's no way I could have been a member of Parliament and not had somewhere to stay in London. And I couldn't have stayed in a hotel all the time because of having my children, taking them down for when it was half term and in different holidays and stuff. So I needed somewhere to stay. Now, a lot of the Tories kind of keep their costs down because they own houses down there already. So they already have property that they can stay in. So for me, I had to take the money that was offered to me to be able to have somewhere to stay. Now, what I don't understand is why you can't have it so that MPs can vote from home, do some sort of electronic voting, then only have to go to Westminster to join in the bits that they're actually needing to join in with, such as if you want to speak in a debate or etc, those kind of things, if you're part of a committee. And then you could quite easily commute, or a lot more people could commute, and that would save huge amounts of money that goes on accommodation. But as Dave pointed out before, a lot of people don't want to give up things like having a pad in London and that kind of stuff. So they don't actually want to look in too much detail at changing the system because they benefit from it. Now, I just think that's ludicrous. There are ways of updating it, but there has to be the will and the push to do it. And to do that, you have to have the right people in there.
Got a question here from Linda. And it's about Parliament again. It's what surprised you most about Parliament or being an MP?
Okay, what honestly surprised me most about being an MP was how much good is going on in the constituency. It really did surprise me how many people are doing things constantly. And trying so hard to change things. I knew there were people doing it, but I could never have kind of really grasped how many, and the amount of hours that people give, often for very little money or no money at all. And it's people who are, in the nicest possible way, they are trying to stop a system from completely breaking. And if those people stop doing it, I mean, God knows where we would be, but at the same time, maybe that would force our politicians to have to actually step up a bit. But yeah, just the amount of good that people do have in their hearts, actually, which was quite refreshing. And what was the other part of that? It was what was the other part?
Or your position of being an MP. What surprised you?
What surprised me, that I was quite good at it. I thought that I would I thought that I would be really, with all these people who were privately educated, etc. I was a bit down on myself, thinking there's no way I'm going to be able to keep up with these people. They're just going to be so much smarter than me, etc. It didn't take me long to realize that in actual fact, my life experience meant that I was much smarter than the majority of them. And also that kind of, imposter syndrome that many of us have, especially people from working class backgrounds. It's so unnecessary because so many of these people are total buffoons, and should not be anywhere near making law, to be quite frank.
Well, that's cool. That's cool. Another question about Parliament is from Anne, and she says, what changes are needed in Parliament to make it friendly, family friendly particularly?
I just think a lot of it, again, is to do with the people who are actually in it, because so many of them will preach about bullying and behaviour and the way you should act. And they are such hypocrites because they are so guilty of doing it. And they do it all day long on social media. And again, I don't understand where it comes from. I don't know if some people just don't recognise it in themselves. That isn't all of them at all. There are plenty of people in there who have different politics to me, but are decent people. So it certainly isn't all of them, but there is a culture of some very catty, nasty behaviour. So I'd say that just comes down to making sure the right individuals are in there. Family friendly, I just don't think you can in a place like that. I took my children there and they were very lucky to be able to experience it in the same way as kind of a museum or something, but it's the whole way it is set up just is not family friendly at all, in any way, shape or form. So I think the only way you make it family friendly is if you change the whole system.
That's cool. Got a lot more questions here. Jackie Davis has got a question here. Going on to politics really and what have you. Do you agree that Labour was in an impossible position as half the country wanted to remain?
It was such a nightmare, because the sad truth is there was the way that the whole thing was handled from start to finish with the referendum. There was always going to be masses of people who felt badly let down. My problem that I had with it, and where I still sit with it, is that, and this is where, you know, some people's politics may differ slightly to mine. I just felt like we should straight away, as soon as we had that policy in 2017 of respecting the result of the referendum, we should have been painting a positive vision of the UK and life after Brexit, and what that would look like with somebody in charge of the country who is going to be implementing policies that would be better for education, for the health service, etc., etc., etc. And we failed to do that, and we got dragged into this constant thing about Tory Brexit and what that looks like, and if you were a Labour person saying you respected the result of the referendum, then you must be supporting a Tory Brexit. Well, no, I always knew that the Tories in charge of Brexit would be very much what the Tories are going to deliver on Brexit. Oh, hello.
You're all right. You're still with us.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. I don't know which bit I got up to, but I always knew that the Tories were going to deliver a hard Brexit, which was why I was so determined that we wouldn't move on the position, because you know, I knew that when we went to the electorate it would be incredibly difficult for us to be able to get a majority to form a government if we change that position. I think we could have the debate about Brexit, and there's some people who would have it until the end of time. I come down on the side of you know, I want different to the kind of politics that we currently have, and that's within the European Union as well. So I am very much an internationalist. I very, very much love Europe. My sister lives over there, but I never had the same thing where people had Europe and what that is intertwined with the EU and what that is. It just, I've always been a little bit of a Dennis Skinner on that sense, I'm afraid.
We coming down to questions now with people who've got their hands up. Jamie Stanley. Jamie, are you there? Jamie. Well, I'll go on to the next one then. The thing is, then we'll come to Damon Horrell. Damon?
Dave?
Jamie.
Sorry, my phone's acting up. Laura, there's a bit of an elephant in the room at the moment, obviously. How do you feel Keir Starmer and his team are performing on his leadership promises to secure the left-wing votes to win the leadership and his 10 pledges?
I personally think that every member of the Labour Party should be working hard to make sure that Keir Starmer doesn't move on them 10 pledges, because it's, you know, that is what he was elected on. I think that it's wrong when people say regarding Jeremy that the policies weren't popular. I just do not agree with that. At the end of the day, you go out and you ask people about nationalisation. The vast majority of people are in support. If we move on some of these policy areas, then I just think we will become completely irrelevant, to be quite frank. So I think it's vital that Keir has the pressure from the left to make sure he doesn't move on these things. But do not underestimate the power of the right wing in his ear, I would say.
Could I ask people who are on the call at the moment to mute the microphones if they're not talking, because we're getting quite a bit of feedback. I want to come to the next person now, which is Damon Hall. Damon?
Thanks, Dave.
Yes, great. Go on then, Damon.
My connection's never great, so I hope this works. Hi, Laura.
Hi, Damon.
But feels like meeting you.
Oh, I can't hear him.
You're breaking up, Damon, which is a bit of a shame.
The question was reference to organising.
Damon, try turning your video off. The bandwidth will go on the screen.
My connection seems to be all off. I'll write a question.
That's a bit better, Damon. No.
Felt rude. Yeah,
right.
Felt rude without a picture. But anyway, nice to meet you. Feel like I met you through this. It's great. How are we doing?
We're doing okay. If you talk, it's slightly better. If I turn around and say we'll have to stop, if you could write your question down, I'll ask Laura. So please try to go ahead now.
I'll write to you, Dave. I'll write the question. No worries.
Right, that'll be okay. That'll be cool. We'll come back to that. We've got quite a few other people with their hands up. We got Chris Lee. Chris?
Hello.
Hi, Chris.
Hi, Laura. It is wonderful to see you once again.
Oh, I know. I see you all the time.
I know. You can hardly escape me, despite no longer being my MP. I mean, not even going to college in the area. So, sorry about that. But just kind of wanted to, I mean, obviously it's probably changed since you were an MP, but obviously you were in the Socialist Campaign Group. I was just kind of wondering if you could kind of sort of talk more about what kind of goes on within that sort of structure and sort of behind the scenes, and also kind of how you feel they've handled their response to a lot of issues such as like RLB being sacked, Corbyn suspension, and various other issues, because obviously there has been a lot of criticism at their kind of handling of some of these issues. I was just wondering to get some insight from yourself about that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm disappointed because, look, the Socialist Campaign Group now is bigger than it ever has been. So it's bigger than it ever has been, and it should therefore be more powerful than it ever has been. But there's a lot of people who have gone into Parliament and got there on supporting Jeremy or the policies, etc., and then very quickly, maybe it's this Westminster bubble, change their tune. I don't like that, really. I just think people should be more honest about who they are and why they're doing something. And as I said before, I've got friends who are politically not in the same place as me, but I do respect them because they are honest about what they are and who they are and what they think and believe, and you can at least have the debate. So I'm disappointed that there's people, for instance, who are in the Socialist Campaign Group who didn't sign their name on the letter to support Jeremy. I just think why would they be in the Socialist Campaign Group actually? And it's, yeah, I think there's some good stuff that goes on in there, but I think there's more that could happen. And I think they need to work at being a more powerful pressure group, agreeing on things to really push for, and remembering that there's a lot of people who have invested a lot of energy and time and are relying on them, really. There's some great people in there as well. And there's a lot of people in there now who I don't know, but I would hope that they would support socialist politics if they're in the Socialist Campaign Group.
That's cool. We've got a person I don't know at all. It's a guy called Conran. Conran? Hello,
Hello.
Conran. How are you? I'm absolutely delighted you've joined us. And you've got a question.
Hi there. Yeah, hi Laura. Great to see you again. It's a shame you couldn't come to the election night stream the other night. It was really fun.
I know. This is the problem when you have children. It's like my kids right now, David, are just having the best time because they've got a late night because I can't put them to bed. So they'll be loving you guys.
Okay. My question is, we were talking about like you know, how we should have been campaigning on like a positive vision of Britain outside of the EU, which is something I agree with. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about what maybe that would have been like, but we could have campaigned on. What kind of vision you think might have, stuff we could have done outside of the EU that people might have supported us who otherwise didn't with the campaign that we ended up having.
I think there's so much, and I think one of the things that we've never really delved into too much is how, you know, the economics of having a, you know, this distribution of wealth that we so wanted to see and was so obvious in the 2017 election. And people will have noticed there were slight changes that happened within the 2017 manifesto and the 2019. And a lot of that was to do with the fact that in one scenario we would be able to kind of do a lot more because we would have been outside of certain things within the European Union that would have given us more freedom to be able to do that. And 2019 was obviously tweaked so that we'd have to incorporate the fact that it could be part of still the European Union, the structures. So I think with regards to the redistribution of wealth arguments, there were a lot of things. One of the things that, without getting into too much detail, just I think delivering a proper national care service, for example, the reality is that within staying inside the European Union would have been far more difficult to be able to deliver, but I think actually outside of those constraints we would have been able to kind of really push that as something to be our new NHS moment, which is it's so desperately needed as well. Also, you know, my dear friends in the RMT will tell you with regards to the privatisation of the railways, and there are many debates that go on, and there's people who disagree with me on my stance on it, but I guess it all comes down to what people's definition of private companies are. And I think that's kind of where the European Union thing, people split, because I think a lot of people have different ideas of how that can work, and for some people the model in Germany is fine, and that's what they wanted to see. For others like myself, I think we could go further with those kind of policies.
Yeah, I agree.
We got no one else who wants to ask a question, so I'm going to ask a question if you don't mind, Laura.
Of course.
I've been in the party for a long time, and I have heard so many people over the last 11 months were saying that they're going to leave the party. Leave the party because of what has happened. And these are people who've been in the party a long time. Now, I know that there are people who have left the party. What would you actually say to them when they've been long-standing members of the party and now they've left?
It's so difficult. And listen, I think this year has been so hard for so many people who have invested a lot of time and energy into a project which has ultimately not worked. Now, I think I've got my own analysis of why I think that didn't work. And I think one of the issues was that, you know, and I don't know if everybody, I'm sure not everybody on here is in the same place politically as me with it, but the focus should never just have been on Parliament. It should always have been about organising in communities. It should have been about the trade union movement. For example, the Labour Party membership grew massively, as we know, but that didn't happen in the trade unions alongside it. So I think along the way, the Labour Party has developed a crisis of identity, and I actually get people, and I have good friends who have said I can't do it anymore for whatever reason. I'm not going to start lecturing people for their personal choices on this thing. Let's you know, this isn't something that you have to sign up to forevermore. But for me personally, I think we have to have socialists in the Labour Party. We have to have people within the Labour Party who are pushing for trade union, the trade unions, etc., etc. But I don't see the Labour Party as the thing that will ultimately deliver the changes that we want. I see people being the thing that will change the way that politics is in this country, and that's through. So my focus is on political education, which obviously you guys are doing already. Political education, organising in communities. The Labour Party and socialist politics has got to kind of become relevant to people. They have to understand it, what it is we're actually saying, because a lot of people are frightened off by what we were saying in 2019, when the reality was that this is stuff that would change and enrich people's lives. So for example, one of the biggest examples is the broadband argument. I mean, it just drives me insane that people would even go on about that being something that's like a communist you know, policy that we're trying to push forward. For Christ's sake, having decent internet connection should just be a given in this day and age for people. But we have to do the work on selling these things, and I think especially with regards to the economy, because there's so many mistruths out there, especially with the way that our newspapers, etc., and we know they're not on our side, so we're always up against it. So I think I'll stay with it, mainly because I didn't think we did it right last time, but also because I don't think politicians and Parliament is the only important thing. I just think it's a piece of the puzzle. If we can get our politicians in Parliament to do U-turns like Boris has done on, you know, the food poverty issues, if we can put pressure on to try and get Starmer to keep to his promises, you know, we've got to try and do that, because that is the system we're ultimately in at the moment. But I put most of my energy into organising the community.
Oh, that's cool. I'm of very similar opinion to yourself, Laura, and the people who have left the party, I don't think any worse of them. I think they must be incredibly frustrated. And to me, they're still my comrades, they're still my friends,
100%.
and I will support them forever and ever.
Yeah, I find it very difficult sometimes waking up and looking at some of the, like, thinking about some of the people who are in the party alongside me. I just think, how are we even carrying the same membership card? I have those feelings and thoughts too, but I guess I just think there's there's a place we have to, we can't just not be in there influencing in some way. I mean, who knows, I might be totally mistaken.
I don't think so. We got a question here, which is Damon, who we couldn't hear before. He said it was interesting in Laura's successes with organising rallies, meetings and marches. What's the secret? And at the same time, I have a feeling her approach wasn't that what you'd call arm's length on, and how important are real life social networks when it comes to political organising? So it's a question in two.
I think you know, I'm not going to blow my own trumpet, but I think being somebody who's authentic and, you know, can understand and communicate with the different people who they're trying to communicate with is a good start. I think people can smell a fraud a mile off, to be quite honest with you. So I think that makes a difference. I'm one of those people who, if I get an idea in my head, I don't stop. I can only describe it, and I know there'll be people on this call who are exactly the same, because that's why they stay involved in politics through the rough and the, you know, the good times and the bad. It is a burning feeling in the pit of your stomach and inside your heart that means that you don't stop and you can't stop. And I don't care if people say that you have to have a thick skin to be in politics. And I'm not going to lie, some of the comments I've had have hurt me more than I kind of probably anticipated they would. I probably thought I was a bit thicker skinned than I am. But I've never let it stop me. And I never will let it stop me. Because I'm very clear in why I'm doing it. And why I want to do it. And why we need to do it. So I don't think there's any special technique. I just think you have to be authentic, and you have to be a good talker, and you have to be prepared to really piss people off sometimes.
Yeah, that is incredibly honest. That is great. Oh, hold on a second. Yeah, I've got a text from your kids. Please, can you keep her on for the next half hour? How are you feeling?
I can't do that. Honestly, I'll get in so much trouble with. I've already like, my daughter only. This is really bad because it's 9 o'clock and my daughter's in reception. But she is, like, you know, she's all right. But I emptied her coat pockets today, and she's come home with loads of marbles that she's pinched from school. So I've already got problems of my own in this house.
Oh dear, Laura, I'd like to speak for everyone here. It's been an absolute pleasure this last hour. It's been great fun. Your enthusiasm, your commitment is absolutely wonderful. Thank you for being there, and long may you continue. Thank you very much indeed, Laura.
And listen, if you want me back at some point, I'll come and finish it, David.
Oh, you're a star. And by the way, primary school teachers are always the best.
Always the best. I am going to have to go, though. I've got to sort these kids out. So it's been lovely seeing you all.
Thank you very much indeed.
Bye.